Mr. Morris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to give the Facebook audience a quick rundown of all of the superlatives around your name, all your former titles, etc. Maybe not all of them, some of them.
Yeah.
Political strategist, of course.
Yes.
Commentator. You more recently are the author of a book called Armageddon, How Trump Can Beat Hillary.
Right.
And then, maybe more surprisingly to some people, this past summer, or earlier in this year, you joined the National Enquirer as the chief political commentator and correspondent.
Yep.
Does that all sound true?
And all's right.
Okay. Anything I'm missing here?
Well, a bunch of stuff, but don't worry about it.
Okay, we'll get into it.
I used to work for a guy named Clinton
I've
from
heard of him.
1977 to 97, and I was Bill and Hillary's chief political advisor. Also, my dad was Donald Trump's lawyer, so I've known Trump my entire life. He would come over to our house frequently for dinner with his father. And I've known Hillary for 20 years in the trenches right beside her, so I know all about both of them.
Wow, so all the spheres are intersecting here.
Yes, colliding, I think is the word.
Okay, colliding might be a better word. Well, I have a whole list of wonderful questions here, but I don't even think I can, I have to pause here. So what was it like having Donald Trump over for dinner? And what did he eat?
Raw meat. No, I don't. I don't recall what he ate, but that was my mother's problem. But he was his father's son. There was Fred Trump, who was my father's client back then. Donald then became his client, and he was very interested in the mechanics of development and of real estate and of business. And they would talk a lot about site assembly and condemnation and all kinds of stuff. Most of the stuff Trump built was either senior built was housing or hospitals and stuff, and certainly nothing political about the conversations. And the Donald Trump I've known over the years, the word I would use to describe him is a manager. He's an efficient manager. He makes things happen. He makes the trains run on time. He gets things done when he says he will. And it is his unbelievable imagination at getting stuff done. There's one very funny story, typical of him. There's a woman in Virginia who owned a beautiful, beautiful house, and she was going bankrupt. And she went to Donald and said, "Would you buy it?" And the bank wanted $20 million for it. And Trump said, "I'm not paying that." So Trump went to her and said, "I'll tell you what, I won't buy your house, but will you sell me all the land around your house? And I don't just mean the acreage, I mean from 1 foot in front of your house all the way around your house. And I'll pay you a couple of million for that." And they made the deal, and then the bank couldn't take over the house, because if anybody opened the front door and put their foot down, they'd be on Trump's property, and there was no easement for access. So the bank saw the light and cut him a very good deal. In a sense, there's a kind of almost Corleone ability to get stuff done and to get it to work when others can't make it work. And that's what always distinguished Trump from me.
So Trump the Godfather is what you're saying.
Yeah, kind of. He doesn't kill people, though. Neither do the Clintons, by the way.
We should ask, or we should make clear right now, are you currently consulting for Trump's campaign at all?
No. What I do is I talk loudly and frequently and publicly in every venue that will have me, and I hope they listen.
All right, so this is a good place to talk a bit more about your most current book. So it's called Armageddon, How Trump Can Beat Hillary. And we'll get to how you actually think that can happen. But in the book, you say if Clinton is elected, it will be, and here I quote, "the end of the America we know and love." So can you explain exactly what you mean by that?
I also say in the book it will be our last election. Now, by that I do not mean we'll become a fascist dictatorship. We'll still have elections every 4 years and stuff. But it will be the last competitive election in which conservative views, that is undoing what Obama has done, have a chance of prevailing. For 3 reasons. First, Hillary's going to take the 12 million illegal immigrants in the United States, grant them citizenship, give them the vote, appoint a Supreme Court that ratifies that, and conservatives will never win another election because they'll all vote with the left. And after a while of that, the number of people who eat taxes, welfare recipients, will gradually outvote the number that pay taxes. When Obama took office, it was 2 to 1. Now it's 1 to 1. When Obama took office, there were 76 million people on welfare, Medicare, not Medicare, Medicaid and other stuff. And 76 million, now there's 107. And 117 million people were working full-time, now 114 are. Under Hillary, those lines will cross. And at that point, with the electorate being dominated by tax eaters who could care less how high taxes go because they don't pay them, you're going to become Greece or Detroit, a downward spiral that only arrests when, in Margaret Thatcher's famous words, you run out of other people's money. And the third thing is that, and this is more serious, is Obama has ordered the admission of 110,000 new refugees, largely from Middle Eastern terror-sponsoring countries, Iraq and Syria, in the next fiscal year. And if you project in Hillary's president, be 500,000 to 1 million. That will give us a population base in the United States from which sufficient numbers of terrorists will sprout to make us as vulnerable and as helpless as Belgium and France now find themselves.
So that's pretty incendiary stuff. The idea that just because we would take in some refugees, more terrorists will sprout up in America.
Well, have you looked at the ones that we've got? Every single one, almost every single one, was not born in the United States. A handful were. They are all descended from immigrants from those countries. Now, the vast, vast majority are obviously peaceful. There was a survey by Pew Research that asked Muslims in the U.S., is there any conceivable way you can see a justification for jihad violence against those who you think are enemies of Islam? And 85% said, of course not. But 15% said maybe. 2 or 3% sometimes. 1 or 2% said hardly ever, but it's possible. 1% said, yeah, I could see it. And, you know, when you're dealing with 2 million or 3 million people, 100,000 potential terrorists is quite a lot. And so that's why I feel it is a definite threat. And the idea that we can vet these folks is crazy. They don't have high school records we can look up or job applications or Google them. They don't even have Facebook accounts.
Okay. Let's turn back to the book for a moment. Again, you just talked about how this will be the end of the America we know and the America we love. In your book, you're advocating for the way that Trump can beat Hillary. What is that specific framework of how he could do that? I should say that 2 weeks ago, he had a real surge in the polls. There was a new poll today, a national poll, that showed that maybe that surge is less widespread than we thought, but he's definitely coming either
poll,
even or above in some battlegrounds.
The newest poll out today is from Rasmussen, who I trust more than NBC because he's a political pollster who does this full time, has Trump 5 ahead.
And that was a national poll?
Yep, having been 2 ahead a week before and 4 behind the week before.
And NBC's poll yesterday was 6
ahead. 6 ahead. Yeah, but NBC has always had Hillary ahead. Rasmussen really, I think, more fairly represents the ebb and flow of opinion.
Well, so hold on, let me jump in then. So how accurate do you think polling is currently in this national election?
I think it's hard to poll in this election because normally what you do is you take your poll, you make sure the demographics work, and then you look at the number of Democrats and Republicans and independents you interviewed. And if you found you got too many Republicans, you weight them down. Too many Democrats, you weight them up. The problem is that party is one of the least important elements in deciding how you vote in this election. 1 out of 5 Democrats is not voting for Hillary. 1 out of 5 Republicans is not voting for Trump. And you got to assume another 1 out of 5 are wavering. And the reason for that is that we're getting a complete realignment of political parties. The Democratic Party is no longer the party of the poor, it's the party of Wall Street. 90+% of the Wall Street money is going to her. And when elitist Republicans like the Bushes or the Romneys or the Kasichs announce that they're in effect supporting Hillary, it's because they come from that sector, the global economy sector, the IMF, World Bank, Wall Street, Stock Exchange, NASDAQ sector is becoming a Democratic Party machine. On the same token, the poor, low-income, particularly white vote is becoming Republican, voting for Trump because they realize that the major reason their wages are down is that we're being flooded by waves of people who are willing to work for almost nothing. and jobs which they can do and want to do, landscaping, hospitality, construction, but that illegal immigrants are willing to do, have such depressed wages that they can't make it into the middle class. And I think that that dichotomy is redefining party in America. And therefore, I think you can't really tell. Used to be that other than incumbency, the number one thing in predicting vote was party. Now that's not true anymore.
Okay, so you're starting to get into a little bit, I think, of what you're arguing in your book, is how Trump can beat
Can win,
Hillary.
yeah.
Yeah. So take us through step by step in a way that kind of a layperson could understand.
Sure.
How you
Well,
see that happening.
Well, I think he's basically following a lot of what we write in the book, which is very gratifying. I believe Republicans go into the fight. They've always had one punch, the right jab. Immigration, foreign trade, religious issues, values issues, crime, one punch. I believe that all works now, and you need it. But you also need the left hook, to throw the left hook to go after the Bernie Sanders voters. 46% of the people who voted in the Democratic primary voted against Hillary Clinton. And I think that and Donald Trump has received almost no money from Wall Street, whereas Hillary is totally financed by it. The Clintons have gotten $70 million from the Saudi monarchy and its acolytes after 9/11. The extent to which the international community, the multinational business interests, and the financial industry have coalesced around Hillary and against Donald Trump really, I think, opens up the opportunity to go after the Bernie Sanders voters. And that includes African American voters. One of the big things that Trump has done, which I urge in my book, is to address the school choice issue. I believe the issue is basically, do you want segregated schools or not? Are you for Plessy v. Ferguson or Brown v. Board of Ed? Because we know that zip codes are totally segregated in America. Very few zip codes are integrated. You're black or you're white. And if you make them go to the local school district their neighborhood says they should, the schools will be either black or white. And therefore, the need for school choice to let parents choose where to send their child within public schools, charter schools, church schools, or private schools is, I think, the civil rights issue of our time. And I think that that issue, combined with a feeling by the African American community that the Democratic Party treats them like a golf handicap. You know, we're about to tee off and we're plus 11 strokes because we've got that vote guaranteed. And I think there's a sense of being taken for granted and not listened to.
So Trump has actually been talking a lot about this very issue recently. Do you have any insight or insider insight about how he can go about that? Who are the people out there that can help him turn out African Americans to vote for?
Well, I think the first task is to make sure they don't turn out to vote for Hillary. Obama beat Romney by 4.1 points. 2 of those 4 points came from the increased turnout of African American voters, which rose from 11% of the vote to 13% of the vote when Obama was running. One of the reasons the Republicans win Congress all the time is the African Americans tend not to vote in those elections. And if the turnout drops down to 11%, and by the way, if Trump gets more than 5 or 6%, like in the high teens or 20s, that's 2 or 2.5 points right there off of the 4-point margin that a Democrat takes into the race.
So we should shift gears just a little bit and say you were famously booted from Fox News for your Mitt Romney prognostication.
Yep.
Obviously, you weren't far off, but you were off. Did that move surprise you? And does that mean that these days you try not to call elections?
Well, it certainly means that I'm a little more cautious than I used to be. First, let me point out that in 2010, I was the only commentator that got it right that the Republicans would gain 60 to 80 seats in the House. And in 2014, I was the only commentator to accurately predict every single United States Senate race in the country. In 2012, I got it wrong because a week before the election, Gallup, Rasmussen, CNN, everybody had Romney ahead. And then the hurricane hit. And when the hurricane hit, number one, Obama looked good, helping the people, and Christie escorted him around. But more importantly, the telephone circuits were out, and therefore there were no telephone poles during that period, and we were flying completely blind. So I was stuck with like an 8-day-old prediction and have gotten skewered for it a little bit. As far as leaving Fox is concerned, at the moment, who could possibly be upset about leaving Fox?
Well played.
I got out one step ahead of the lawsuits.
So, so since you brought it up, did any of that surprise you? Was it shocking to you?
No, I don't know, and I like Roger Ailes, and he was instrumental in giving me tremendous visibility, and I don't want to say anything nasty about him. Let's talk about Hillary. I want to say stuff nasty about her.
Okay, so we'll get to her in a second. So what should Trump's debate strategy be then? So we have something coming up on Monday, the first presidential debate. I just can't even imagine what is, from what I've heard, he's not spending all the kind of normal prep time in the kind of old school way of prepping for a debate.
Well, I think that Trump's mission in the debate is to show that he is not a demagogue, not unpredictable, not unreliable, not Islamophobic, not racist, not deplorable, not sexist, not a buffoon, not a clown, all of the things Hillary Clinton has said he is. Her campaign is essentially a campaign of calling him names. And it's a very brittle campaign because once you realize he isn't those things, and I know this guy, he's not, he's a manager, and he's not any of those things. Once you realize that, her whole campaign is shattered. A very brittle campaign, and she has nothing behind it to fall back on. She hasn't developed other issues behind that. The other thing Trump needs to do is that he needs to talk to the American people, frankly, and say, with the bombs that went off in New York City, do you seriously believe that we will be safer, less safe, or about the same with 110,000 new immigrants from Muslim terror-sponsoring countries than we are now? And if you agree with me that we'd be less safe, then why on earth wouldn't you vote for me?
Wow. So he's not calling and asking you this, though?
I say it every chance I get and every place I get, and I got to assume the guy's awake.
So,
unlike Hillary.
do you think Trump reads the National Enquirer?
Oh, I'm sure he does. I'm sure he loves it. He probably has the original copy framed on his wall.
So what do you think of that place so far? You now have this position as their chief political correspondent, columnist?
Well, I think it's great. I believe that the entire process of realignment of our politics that I'm describing includes the reenfranchisement of the most excluded group in American politics, low-income, middle-income white men and their wives and friends and women as well, but more men, whose turnout has dropped enormously, who has the lowest turnout of any demographic group in our country, far lower than black or Latinos. It's the garage mechanic that proudly says he hasn't voted in 30 years because he doesn't trust any of them. Those people are now looking at Donald Trump and saying, you know, this is different. This is an exception. This is a guy that I really can relate to and can trust. And you don't find those folks reading the New York Times. But so if you want to talk to them, go where they are, the National Enquirer.
So you do a weekly column, or I guess it's a weekly column.
Weekly, yes.
Yeah. And obviously, in many of those, you talk a lot about Trump, but you especially talk about Hillary. So in some ways, sometimes your message seems not to be let's elect Trump, but let's not elect Hillary.
Well, that is true. I happen to really like Trump and have a high opinion of him, but not nearly as much an opinion as I have a low opinion of Hillary.
So
aren't you going to ask me why?
You've asked yourself,
okay.
So please go ahead.
With anybody who you've known for 40 years, you see the changes that have taken place in them. And you very often see traits that you once noticed that take over their personality. You know, they had a big nose, but not that big. And I believe that the Clintons have become materialistic and corrupt in the time since I've known them. They always cut a few corners. They always wanted to maximize their money, usually not for personal gain, but for political gain. Give me campaign contributions so I can run ads, so I can win elections, so I can take power. Now it works the other way. Elect me, give me power so that I can get money. And it's not money for my campaign, it's money for my wallet. $238 million, $250 million of personal income, not the foundation, not the global initiative, into the pocket and pocketbook income since they left the White House. When Hillary became Secretary of State, Bill built this edifice called the Clinton Foundation. Originally, when she was running for president, he built it because people wanted to get in early on Hillary's administration, so they gave it money. Then when she was Secretary of State, and now afterwards when she's running again. It's opportunist money trying to buy influence with her by giving major contributions. And they do buy influence. A majority, 85 out of the 150 people who were admitted to see Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, who were not government employees or foreign officials, were donors to the foundation. Bill Clinton was always taking people on special trips, special meetings with Hillary, special access, and always short-circuiting the problems and getting them right in there. And that's a corrupt enterprise. That literally is buying and selling access. We have never had a corrupt president in the United States. Nixon was corrupt politically, but he died poor. Grant was corrupt, his administration was corrupt, but he died broke. And Warren G. Harding died in the middle of a scandal and never left much money. You're dealing here with someone who is literally using this office in order to make money and who won't stop. She won't dissolve the Clinton Foundation or the Global Initiative. So you're going to have the former president passing the bag around to every corporation, every special interest, every foreign country, saying, put some money in it and you'll get what you want. Does Algeria want us to release the jet fighters to them, despite the Islamist infiltration of their military? Yeah, $400,000 to the Clinton Foundation and they get it. Does Russia want to take over 20% of the uranium supply in the United States, even though we're not self-sufficient in uranium? Yeah. Take $136 million from Justra, the mining executive, and pay $1 million directly to Bill as a speaking fee, and Hillary, as Secretary of State, approves the purchase, even though everybody urged her not to. And I believe this pay for play is crucial in understanding why she should not be president. And that has spawned a culture of lying and of secrecy, secret emails, to cover up this trail. And she would a whole lot rather the Russians and the Chinese know our secrets than that the American media knows hers.
So I do want to point out that many have argued that the Clinton Foundation has done much good around the world, and we don't need to have a
There's a patina, a veneer of good on top in order to justify the rest of it. But tell me why only 7% of their money is given out in grants every year, by far the lowest of any foundation in the world.
I don't know if that's
well, it is true, and the answer is, well, there are two answers. The Clinton people say our model isn't grant, it's sending our people in to do good works. But still, it's a minuscule amount of money. And I think that is a veneer to justify the money that they take. The Clintons also say there were no favors exchanged. Well, for God's sakes, a meeting with the Secretary of State is a favor. You go into one of these third world countries and you say, as I was telling the Secretary of State last week over lunch, you can get anything you want in the country, oil concessions, mineral drilling, cable TV, anything you want, because of the perception of that level of influence. And by the way, I'm speaking as somebody that could have had that level of influence. If I had been more complicitous with the Clintons and not strayed from them, we left on good terms. And they've never done anything to tick me off, and I haven't done anything personal to do that. But I wouldn't do that, and I don't think anyone should. And I think Hillary is awash in it now.
So we should point out that you were with the Clintons during some of the early sex scandals.
Well, I ran Bill's first campaign in 1977. We still measure his incumbency in terms of elections, not scandals. His first election in 1978, and then worked for him all through the 80s. He lost an election in 1980. He fired me, and then he lost, and then he rehired me, and I got him back in. And then I worked with him straight through 1997, when I had to resign because of my own scandal.
So that brings me to this question, which is, for both the Clintons, what you learned, and then what you learned through your own scandal, what are the keys to rebounding from a sex scandal?
personal change. You have to change on the inside, and it shows that you've changed on the outside. And today is September, what?
22nd.
22nd. On September 10th, my wife and I celebrated our 39th wedding anniversary.
So there's leads me to my next question. The keys to making a marriage work. Almost 40 years.
Oh, what are they?
Yeah, what?
Well, you can't live a dual life. You can't live one life outside and the other life inside. But one of the keys is to honor my wife's request not to talk about it on television.
Well, that seems like a perfect place to stop. So thank you so much. Again, this has been Dick Morris. He has a brand new book. You have seen the full screen during our broadcast. But again, it's called Armageddon, How Trump Can Beat Hillary. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.